good morning, and welcome to another edition of Techniche Tips. I'm your host, Joseph M. Smith. I brought my guest on, but I'm going to bring it on a little later with a little more of an introduction. But we're so excited, first of all, to have you with us. And if you are tuning in, let me know where you are tuning in from. This is going to be a fun time for us all. Well, we got Operation Tech Takeover in the building already. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings, brother. So glad to have you with us. Oh, I'm struggle streaming already. Peace and blessings. So glad to have you on, man. And I'm so glad that you joined the show. Listen, where are you going to be celebrating Christmas? As you see, I have the Christmas decorations up here. I wanted to get us nice and festive this morning for you and really kind of just say, hey, it's been a year. It's been over almost 2 years in the making that we had this show. So I'm so excited to have you guys on and talking about all the great things that we're doing today. So I'm not going to delay our guest because I know we have a lot of things to cover. But what I do want to say here is that if you're not familiar, go ahead and subscribe to youtube.com/@Techniche Tips. That's youtube.com/@Techniche Tips, where you can see all the episodes that we've had and done already and all the great things that we're going to do. But this is a special one for you because we are going to be having a conversation that I believe you would love to hear more about, specifically around the topic of New Year's resolutions. Now, everybody think about Christmas, but right after Christmas is done, there's that one period, that short period between Christmas, New Year's, and January where everybody is hip to New Year's resolutions, whether that is going to the gym, whether that is changing the way your sleep patterns are, whatever it may be. And so the conversation is going to be revolving around that fear and failure, and also how do we overcome that? How do we reframe that? And so this is a great conversation for those who are looking to transition in a career, if they moved on from one position to another. And so we're going to have that conversation. And so, yep, I do got also us here. Oh, yep, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. That's right. There's a QA portion that's happening. And so I'm so glad that Scott said that because it's so true. Operation Tech Takeover. He said it. There's going to be a Q&A portion halfway through the show. So you definitely want to make sure that if you have questions for our guests, that you have them teed up, ready to go. And I'll actually star them along the way and make sure that I'm going to bring them up at the appropriate time. So we got Kareem as well. Well, Kareem, how you doing, Kareem? So good to see you. A guest on our morning show that we have on Monday. So glad that you are here as well. And without further ado, I'm going to bring up our guest to the stage, none other than Devon. How are you doing, Devon? I hope you are well.
I am so well and really excited to start a Saturday morning with you and have a cool conversation to get into our weekend, to get into our holiday vibe, to get into our Reframe 2025 vibe. So super excited. Thanks for having me.
Oh no, it's awesome. And just so we could show our backgrounds, we were talking about it. We need to get festive. So
Let's get festive.
we both got Christmas backgrounds that we thought would be really cool to have on. And so I just want to let you guys know that this is gonna be a fun conversation. If you have not had your cup of coffee this morning, don't worry, we got you covered. This is your caffeine right here, your pick me up as we get going and having this wonderful show. And so without further ado, again, we have this wonderful guest, Devon, here. I want to give her opportunity to share her basically a little bit of brief bio about who she is in case you're not familiar with her, and then we'll get going on with the conversation. So Devon, the stage is yours. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to these days.
Thanks, Joseph. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Devon Montgomery Pasha. I'm a CMP and CED, so certified meeting professional and certified event designer. I've been in the meetings events industry for a little over 20 years now, which feels weird because I don't think I'm old, but like when you get to that 2-decade mark, you're like, man, okay. Like I'm seasoned, right? It's like, I'm not like super boss status CEO, but like not a noob anymore. Got some good vibes going. So again, I've been in the meeting events industry for a little over 20 years as a planner, producer, et cetera. Shifted into the user experience space with event design and now starting a new chapter as a professional speaker and MC. So really bringing this energy and design and strategy to some clients in order to ensure that all the experiences that they're putting together for their families, clients, events come with effervescence and joy and positivity to start off with and allow me to be their sort of chief storyteller throughout their event.
I love it. Chief storyteller. If you are a person that loves stories or telling stories, put the word story in the chat. I just want to see a thing about who's actually a good storyteller, because this is going to be a great conversation for you. And just to give you guys privy to it, we were talking prior to this the other day, and it was just a great conversation talking about various things. But one of the things that really kind of popped up in our conversation was this idea about reframing failure, and this is important because there's a lot of people that have either, and what up, Nigel? I got Nigel on Instagram and on YouTube as well. So glad that he stopped by. This is Nigel.
Welcome.
So glad. He actually, besides the work he does at HubSpot, he actually has an amazing course called Learnful, that if you're interested in learning and getting into pre-sales, we have a link for that below. Go ahead and take the quiz. There's also information there. So if you're on YouTube, go to learnful.com for more, or go down to the link and click that to make it easier for yourself. And you'll be able to find out more about the amazing work that Nigel is doing. So glad you're able to stop by the show. And I wanted to keep the conversation rolling about what we were talking about, which is framing things. But let me ask you first, how did you get into the event space? How do you get into that? Because some people might be interested in saying, hey, I want to do what you're doing. How did you get there?
It's so funny. I definitely feel like we have callings in life and things that we're just like super, super drawn to. So I blame my grandmothers. And when I say blame, I thank them so much for what they instilled in me. I always start with my maternal grandmother. We call her Mama. So Mama was a home economics teacher and a homemaker in the best and most respectful version of that word. So she taught me how to starch napkins, polish silver, sew buttons, really domestic arts. But what I loved about being around her and being in her home was how safe and comfortable she made people feel. There was always food on the stove, a drink available, and this idea that when you come in, she was gracious, and in that grace made people feel safe and welcome, like a sense of belonging, which is a great word we use in the industry now. And I just loved that feeling. And I always wanted to emulate that with what I did for family or guests. And that carried into, being a hostess, but wanting to go into an industry where I could create those senses and magical moments for people. My paternal grandmother Martha, was a socialite. She was an academic, incredibly smart, always a champion for women in history, women in academics, just like empowering women in fields for their best learning to achieve their higher selves. And her superpower was bringing people together in these sort of salon style or, parties where it was like you plus you in a petri dish and like what would happen. I actually know of a story of a couple who got married thanks to her little chemistry here and there and rearranging some schedules at the university where she was a vice president to when she saw the chemistry there, and they were married for over 50 years. So it's just this really exciting opportunity. And the magic of bringing people together and seeing chemistry and empathizing with chemistry. So 1 + 1 equals, I've always been enamored with food, with the hospitality industry, with travel and events. I think it's because of the magic of people, of person plus person equals power, person plus person equals conversation, equals change, equals chemistry. And I think that's why after the pandemic, people went back to in-person events. It's because that energy and chemical exchange can't happen as much online. And it's what we crave. It's sort of, I think, an anthropological, like deep rooted, we are, from the oldest sense, we are tribal. We look for people who are like us and know us or feel connected to us. And we're always looking for that. And so that's just something I've always been drawn to. And even going to a liberal arts college and being a huge fan of education, lifelong learner, it's just the industry that is closest and nearest and dearest to my heart, where I get to connect to people and I get to have them connect to each other, and I can empathize and understand them. So these are things that are my superpowers, and when you get to use them for good. And for all of you tuning in, every industry you've ever worked in touches events, and we touch you. Anytime you bring people together for sales, this podcast, for example, sitting in a classroom, your sales meeting, team building, all of those are events. And bringing in a strategist and bringing in someone who understands human behavior, how memories are made, where fear is anchored, allows you to really get the most out of those events and make people feel like they're learning something, gaining skills, meeting the right people. So I just love that we transcend in our industry all other conversations.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm going to be honest and say, man, when I had an experience of being in the field marketing recently with my company. We met a mutual friend there as well. And so I felt alive again in that environment. And sometimes we could take being in person for granted. There's people that I met that I only knew them from a virtual standpoint that got to know me in a brand new sense from being in person. And it really changed the conversation around, changed how we viewed each other, changed why we were wanting to actually engage in business and other things. And so you're absolutely right. There's something about being in the room that you cannot change.
I love it. And I think that's where I ventured more into professional speaking because of the stories I've learned, the learning I've had, the development I've gone through. I wanted to share that learning. I wanted to share those opportunities to connect and hopefully to teach others the perspective I had gained, mostly through hard learning and failing forward. And I think that's where you and I started to have the conversation. So when we talk about fear, we talk about failure, most of us hear those words and immediately have this sense of negativity. And so many of us, I think, have been raised to think that, to be afraid of the unknown and to utilize fear as a stopper.
Yeah.
And in addition, to be afraid of failure, because again, failure is something that is a stoppage. It's like, once you have failed, you can go nowhere else. You are a failure. Please go to the failure colony and live there isolated for the rest of your life, because failure, is like equivalent to leper. Like, please go away. We no longer want you. And you wear that as this badge of shame. However, failure is a natural part of life. We all fail. We all failed at learning how to walk. We all failed at learning how to use the potty for the first time. We all failed our first spelling test, because that is how we learn. You learn less from success than you do from failure, because that is where the lessons are. So when you think about failure, there's a couple of kinds. There's failed in terms of like just micro mistakes. Like I didn't capitalize the letter. I put the wrong date on the contract. And so it's like, whoopsies, like, and that's a fail. That's a learning, and those are micro failures. When you think of more catastrophic failures, you think of the Microsoft update a couple months ago and like the whole airline industry went down. It's like, that's a pretty catastrophic failure. And it had a larger ripple effect, but there was so much learning in that. Delta Airlines learned that like they are very reliant on one set of technology. And they had 4 times the negative impact on their services than any other major airline because of how reliant they were on one piece of technology. Think of all the learning that comes out of that, scheduling those updates, maybe having backup or fail-safe systems now, which is going to ensure that if something like that happens again, that they immediately have a succession plan to ensure that they don't have a stoppage of that magnitude. So failure is where we learn. So when you think about a failure, you either gained knowledge, right? Yeah. Or you gained success. These are the two, it's binary. So why not embrace it as an opportunity to learn?
Yeah. And we have a guest that stopped by. Ashley says, rock star. She is loving this conversation. And I do too. I think the reason why I felt like we needed to have this conversation at this particular time was because there's so many people that are now in this transitional period. We heard about September surge. We know there were tons of layoffs, especially in the tech community. Sure. And now people are like, how do I bounce back? Because it's been 6, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe more of trying to find out how do I get back into a job. And I feel like a failure, right? That's
absolutely. And again, let's talk about reframing, because so many of us, when we have these opportunities, we go into this really negative self-talk. We tell ourselves it's our fault. We tell ourselves we made mistakes. We tell ourselves we don't have value. And that voice gets pretty loud. And then it creates this filter that no matter what happens, it goes through negativity filter first. And it's so hard to get out of that mindset. And that voice does get louder and louder. So when you think about failure, for those of you going through layoffs, a lot of my friends in higher ed are facing the same thing. And it's like, it's me. I did something. I am a failure. Well, let's stop for a second. Unless you embezzled from that company or physically harmed someone, I guarantee that something is not your fault.
Yeah.
So when you take the fault out of it and think that this is a bad situation, it has a negative connotation. What have I learned? Maybe you learn about the inner workings of that particular industry, and maybe you think to pivot to a different one and apply your skills somewhere else. Maybe it's an opportunity to say, you know what, I have this time. Where can I upskill to ensure that I have that next set of skills in order to be extra relevant in the next job that I choose? So again, and I don't want to minimize, I understand I've been through being laid off, and the first 3 days was like, I went to Boston Market, got the family size mac and cheese and the family size brownies, and to get out of my PJs until my sister called and she said, you've had 48 hours to wallow, time to put on your big girl pants and let's get to it.
Come on now.
I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, wallowing is fine. Your emotions are fine. Every feeling is fine. But the actions that you take after processing those feelings is where you want to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing we talked a lot about was fear. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just want to, yeah.
No,
so
keep going. This is good.
We're going to wiggle. We're going to
my
wiggle,
mind,
right?
My mind is going with you.
Yeah. So we're going to wiggle into fear, because fear and failure tend to be homies, and they tend to always walk together like salt and pepper. One doesn't go without the other.
Yeah.
So because so many of us are afraid of failure, what we tend to do in those moments is to mold ourselves, whittle our authentic selves away from who we are in order to achieve this status of not failure. But who are you serving in that adjustment of self? You're not serving you are serving others.
Yeah.
And a really wise man once told me, if you are not serving and processing your own goals, you are by default working on the goals of others.
Say that. Oh, yes, that's so good.
If you are not working on your own goals, you are by default working on the goals and for the goals of others.
Yeah.
So when you think about fear, most of us go into this status of, I'm going to fear failure or being laid off or this perception. So I'm going to do everything to avoid that away from me and my purpose.
Yeah.
And then when the happens, thinking, going back to the layoff example, it's, I don't have a sense of power of self. And so you go into that sense of worthlessness. And that's what we're afraid of.
That is what we're afraid of, is being considered worthless. I don't amount to anything. I can't produce. I can't provide. I can't do whatever. Fill in the blank. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. So if we reframe the word fear, there are healthy types of fear and there are unhealthy types of fear. So healthy fear is like, there is a cliff over there. I may fall down and sustain catastrophic damage to self. So that fear is like, hey, pretty sure that's not safe. Let's roll that back.
Yeah.
Or there's a really dark room and we don't know what's around the corner. It's like, there's a fear that pops up which says, I want to protect you from that and redirect you away from potential harm. However, we are the only species on the planet that can ruminate on fear. And fear can continue in ourselves, and we can remember fear. We revisit fear. And so what happens is we stay in that sort of fight or flight space and never get a chance to relax from it. That's the type of unhealthy fear. That's the fear that's in the backseat of the car. You're driving all happy and just goes, just kidding. Put your hand over your eyes and says, don't do anything. And you don't know which way to go. And listen, we need that fear to be like, it's back there. You go ahead and sit right there in that back seat. I got this.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Listen, we're about to go to Q&A in about 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
I need you to do a couple of things. One, I need you to share it with somebody right now, this stream, in regards to somebody who may be in a place of indecision, maybe in a transitional period of their lives.
For sure.
They might be crippled by fear unknowingly. Send this to them right now. And then the second thing I want you to do is right now, just a reminder to yourself, type no fear in the chat. Go ahead, put no fear in
First
the chat.
action, no fear.
Yeah.
And just to say it out loud, to type it, hear yourself saying it. So type it in the chat and say it out loud. What you're starting to do is take back control, because you have control over this. And the first step is to take action to say, what does no fear look like?
Yeah. And
So what I want
oh,
everyone to
totally.
do as the first task is when this is over and sometime today, I want you to find a quiet place. And I want you to set a timer for 11 minutes. So 11 minutes, this is specific. And I want you to write down in that 11 minutes, what does wild success look like for you?
Mm,
So
mm,
timer for 11 minutes, get a journal, a piece of paper, whatever it is that where you can keep it. You want to write it in big block letters. If you want to talk to text on your devices, but find a place to record this. Now, I'm a fan of writing with pen on paper because the kinesthetics of like physically moving helps me anchor thoughts. Reading it back aloud helps me anchor thoughts. These hit different parts of your brain. I'm going to nerd out for a second and say I did start my master's a few years ago. I have a master's certificate in creativity and innovation with a focus
love
in
it.
neuroscience. So that's a
Oh,
nerd thing. But your brain processes language in 3 different ways: to hear a word, to see a word written, and to see images in relation to those words. They process in different parts. So the more that you anchor these statements, the more that you write them, see them, say them, what you're starting to do is take back control of what's happening here. So
love
when
it.
you set this opportunity of what does wild success like for you, what you're
Yes.
essentially doing is seeing in your path your goals.
Mm,
And when
mm,
you can anchor your goals, what you do is you take back control over being the CEO of your life, the chief, the chief badass officer, bad thing officer of your life. But you have to know where that is. You have to have some sense. What
yeah.
that allows you to do is to see that car again, is to drive towards something. So when you're in your role, you have to understand they're not using you to achieve something. You are using them to achieve that wild success. And
Mm,
when you start to embody that sense of wild success, what you're doing is taking back control over the fear. It
mm,
allows you to keep fear in the back seat because you know which direction you're going. And you're
mm,
like, oh, I deviated over here. Or does this new role? Or I got laid off. Where was I in that? Was I achieving my wild success or was
mm,
I being used for their wild success? Reframe,
mm,
reframe, reframe, right?
yeah.
Healthy fear, unhealthy fear. When you take back that control, when you have the vision of wild success, what you're training yourself to do is to look for that wild success everywhere.
Yeah.
And that starts to empower and put fear back in its box because what you're framing and what you're looking towards is something that you've embodied and
Mm,
you have control over. So the more you start to have that positive mindset, the more you start to reframe to have that negative fear take a back seat, the more you're in control of where you want to go.
yeah.
You take back those situations that cause that fear and sense of failure.
Yeah. And you just said something that reminded me we need to talk about this as well because we talked about the fear, we talked about the failure, but we didn't really talk much about wild success. And you alluded to that just now. I'd love for you to dive in, give a definition to it, let people kind of understand what do you mean by wild success.
Absolutely. For those of you who are faith-based, it's that prayer thought. It's that positive mindset. It's that giving it up to your deity. It's giving it up to, I'm a manifester. I give it up to the universe, right? There are powers that we don't have control over. There is a science to that faith, to that manifesting, to that prayer, whatever it is you choose to call it. What you're doing is retraining your brain to look for those opportunities, to be aware of how to achieve that. We have radars in our brain that look for certain things. How I can prove that to you is anyone who's ever looked for a new car. Mine was a white Nissan Rogue, right? I was like, oh, this is the family car. It has the safety. It's in my budget. All of a sudden, everywhere I look, on every road, everywhere, I'm like, man, when did these all pop up? Is this the new one? Like you see them everywhere. They have always been there, but you are now aware of that particular thing and you see it everywhere. This is how I want to
Mm,
help you train yourself to see your vision of success. Then what you do is you're immediately aware and you start to see opportunities for that. You start to see yourself in your current role. I'm like, oh, is there an opportunity? Or like, oh, I'm missing an opportunity. Do I feel authentic in this space? Like I have control? Or am I yielding control and helping them with their wild success as a detriment to me? Those subtle shifts, those empowering thoughts, those positive forward thinking thoughts allow you to go within. And that small power of looking within allows you to rise above and take control back.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people want to take that control back, and we're about to switch over to the Q&A portion.
For sure.
So I want to definitely make sure that I remind people, go ahead and put your questions in now so that we could queue them up. I do have one that I want to throw out to you, and this is something that we could probably, it's a two-parter. So one will be, you can ask that now, and then the other one will be probably something that you probably answer when we go into the Q&A portion.
For sure.
But in regards to specifically, when it comes to that, I'm going to use this word because it's the word I'm thinking about, imposter syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're being successful at your job, or whatever the case may be, but you still feel crippled by this thing. And so I wanted to ask you, one, if you can speak to that, and then this is another thing later down that we could talk about during the Q&A. But is there a story? Because I know you're a storyteller. What's a story that resonates with you that you could share in regards to someone that have dealt with fear and failure and rose to the top and became wildly successful? There's tons of them, but I know that you probably have one. But let's stick with the imposter syndrome first, and then we'll get to the other one later.
So imposter syndrome is a manifestation of that negative self-talk. However, I have found over time that imposter syndrome means I'm in a growth place, that I can lean into that and think, I have this opportunity. I'm already here. Someone is giving it to me. The imposter syndrome comes from, I don't know what's next. So I call myself a recovering box checker. So when I tell you that story of molding yourself to someone else's goals, I was the grand poobah of that. I was the queen. I was the Beyonce level slayer of working for other people's goals. And I had no idea of my sense of self. Wow. And sometime in 2020, I had a catastrophic breakdown of like, I have no idea who I am and what I want. Because I'd spent my entire adult life working for others. Yeah. And I was the best at, you give me a checklist, I got you. Anyone I dated, like, oh, you're the football guy. I love football. I play fantasy. I know everything about my local team. Oh, you're a tech nerd. I know everything about this. I've watched every episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I would turn myself into the perfect version of whatever I was given. When you shift out of that and start to take a little bit of power, when you start to take a little chance, imposter syndrome is similar to the fear of, I don't know what's around the corner. So you become afraid. So you have that voice that's like, you don't belong here. You don't know what's going on. They're going to catch up. They're going to tell you that like, you're totally a fraud. And you're like, ooh, so maybe you can do two things. You can give into that voice and be like, you know what? I'm going to remove myself from that situation to avoid the negative self-talk. Or you reframe into, the reason I'm saying that, because I don't know what happens next. Because I don't know if that voice is true or not. The second is you tell yourself, I'm going to fake it till I make it.
Yeah.
Which is a real way to reframe your brain into believing you're not faking it anymore. This is really and truly who you are. And the more you say like, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it, making it is not someone else's version of success. Making it is you yourself truly and firmly believing in whatever it is that is. And you asked me for a story. So
but before you tell the story, go ahead, y'all. Now is the Q&A portion of the show. If you want
please. Let's start a conversation.
Yeah, go ahead and put it below whatever your question may be. But I'm also going to make it a little fun today. We're going to click here if you want to call into the show. I'm going to drop that link. But I want to make sure that you all are aware of that before I do it, so you're not bombarded or scared. You don't have to show your video. You don't have to show your face, by the way.
No,
You
just
just
the call on in. So remember,
Yeah.
as human beings, we grow in the direction of the questions that we ask. So there is no such thing as a bad or a dumb question, because I guarantee you someone else is thinking it. I guarantee you it's important to you. I guarantee you the answer will serve you and others. So never be afraid to ask questions. And this is especially to any females in our audience. We generally get labeled as challenging when we ask questions. Wear it with pride. Ask your questions, move forward, push up, challenge, because that is how we all grow.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So I'm gonna let you ask your question now. Not your question. I'm gonna let you tell your story now, and we'll keep the conversation rolling.
So a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to become an adjunct professor at the university I was working at to teach events to a group of undergraduate students. And it was right before my first class, and all of a sudden it was like, I don't know anything. I'm not. I don't have my master's yet. Like I just know what I know. There it holds no value, and really crippled to the point of like shaking, panic, like anxiety, adrenaline through the roof. And I reached out to someone who I knew just tangentially. She seemed to really have it together. She always seemed positive moving forward. So shout out to Courtney Stanley, who I sent her a LinkedIn message. And I said, I am dealing with some really crippling imposter syndrome. Do you have any tips? So instead of texting me back, try this, try this, try that, she sent me a voice memo. And she recorded herself to give me a pep talk. We really had just kind of been in a LinkedIn orbit. I knew she was a powerful part of my industry, a gifted storyteller, very confident, very positive. And she took the time to speak to me instead of just one-off texting or even being like, I don't really need to help you. And that pep talk of you've already been given this opportunity because someone believes in you. You've been given this opportunity because your experience is valuable. You've been given this opportunity because you showed a passion to want to do it. You've already got this. Take the fear away. Take the fear away. And that relationship has grown over time. Courtney Stanley is actually one of my business and speaking coaches now, and we've really developed a long relationship. But it all started with a sense of imposter syndrome. And in the years we've known each other and I've been coached by her, I have blossomed in my industry. I've become a thought leader. And in 2024, I was named one of the most influential people in our industry. And that had to do with overcoming that first imposter syndrome and starting that journey and putting that pebble in the bucket and watching it grow and grow and makes bigger and bigger and bigger ripples, just because she helped me reframe that fear.
Wow. And now you're leaning into something that I love to talk about, because sometimes we need people to see what's inside of us before we can even realize what's there. And that's a great example of that. Can you talk a little bit more about just the experiencing somebody? I mean, obviously you kind of share that story now, but talking about champions, having somebody that champions you and the impact that can have.
So our community is what lifts us up. You know, we talked earlier about your tribe, because you belong in your tribe. So want to clarify, there's two different words that we've used. We want to fit in, or we want to belong.
Yeah.
Fit in means you're taking pieces of your authentic self away in order to fit the mold of others, of what you perceive has value. Belonging is showing up exactly who you are and being included, being seen, being validated and acknowledged. So we need to strive for belonging and stop trying to fit in. Because if we fit in with the crowd, we're all going to be blonde Barbies, you know, like whatever the perceived value of beauty or value or validation, like whatever that is to someone else's standard, but we would all be the same.
Yeah.
So who do you want to be? You want to be you, or you want to be Barbie?
Yeah. Listen here. That's so good. And listen, I haven't said this in a while, but I will say it again. I don't keep my guests long. If the questions ain't flowing, we going. All right. So listen, I'm gonna throw out one more, give you opportunity to type in your questions below or call into the show, but I'm not gonna keep my guests here long at all. So before, I know we talked about it a little bit, but I want to kind of dive into something you said really earlier in the conversation. You're looking to pivot not just into doing events, but actually being an MC. What made you decide, hey, I want to get on the stage, I want to let it be known that I'm here to rock the show.
When I did the 11-minute exercise a few years ago, I closed my eyes. I gave myself quiet space. I was crying, by the way, because no one had ever asked me that question before, ever.
Wow.
What I wanted. And again, it was recovering from me perceiving value is only invaluable to others versus in finding value to myself. And in that 11-minute, I saw in my mind's eye a stage. And being on stage, getting some recognition, but also being on stage to share my voice with others to be impactful to the human beings that I could touch. Oddly enough, I took a walk later that day with the group I was with. And lo and behold, in the hotel we walked into on a beach town in The Hague in the Netherlands was the stage I had seen in my mind's eye.
No.
Almost exactly. And I've never been there before ever in my entire life.
Wow.
And I saw that stage and I said, okay. And in the 2 years since then, have asked for opportunities, have written keynotes and campfires, have put my name in the hat to be considered, and gotten more and more opportunities. Some were free, which was great experience. Some have started to get paid. And I realized that this is something that is valuable to others. And not everyone wants to be on stage. Not everyone is great at being on stage. I'm sure we've all been to those events where like the CE something gets up there and goes, okay, everyone, that was a great quarter. And we're rah, rah, rah. And you're like, stop.
Couldn't somebody else have done that?
Couldn't someone else have done that? Someone who makes you feel like you belong, someone who brings a sense of positivity and energy, someone who sets the stage, someone who hypes your speakers and be like, whoa, yeah, I'm like really excited for this. Or someone who's able to say in a somber way. I have friends in MC spaces who are protocol officers, who are fantastic bilingual to bring a sense of reverence, but also being able to do it in 2 languages. I have friends in the MC space who do who specialize in weddings or social occasions to have people feel the sense of that occasion and keep that energy in the most positive vein possible. I have some who are auctioneers who work with nonprofits in certain gala spaces to raise funds. We're all different, but the value is in using a conduit who understands where you want to get with that in-person moment and becomes the tool that you use in order to achieve that goal.
Wow. That was really, really good, y'all. That was really, really good. I know you mentioned it earlier, but let's say it again. What people should do, their homework assignment. You said 11 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk that again. For those that just joined, let's bring that back full circle. What's that homework assignment for them? And then we're going to call it a day because that was really good.
So your homework assignment is to go somewhere quiet where you're not distracted. Put your phones down, turn them off, put them in a different room, turn the TV off. Like you need to be in a quiet space because you have to look inwards. Okay. Not be distracted by outwards. Because when you're distracted by outwards, you start to fit in versus understanding where it is you belong. So set a timer for 11 minutes. If you have to use your phone, use your phone. And think about what wild success looks like to you. And just write down the first thing that comes up and just go and go and go for 11 minutes. And it's okay. If you don't know it yet, just write. Just write. I don't know yet. Here's why I don't know. If I had a thing, like just go, because what you're doing is empowering your inner voice. What's going to happen as a result of that is what you're doing is training that radar. It's called RSV, radar, to be aware of opportunities. You're also creating your inner voice to say, where is that opportunity? Am I sitting in that opportunity right now? Does this serve me and that goal? Or am I not being served by that? And where can I pivot in order to start in that direction? Just the step of writing it down is the first step. You're already making progress towards that goal. There is no failure in taking a step. There is no failure in trying something in order to achieve that, because you're either going to get there or you're going to learn from it. There's a success or a lesson. There is no failure. Okay. That word has no power over you. Remember, fear is 2 things. Healthy fear keeps you safe from danger. Unhealthy fear tells you there's danger all the time. We're not in danger all the time. There is no bear in the room. We're not always standing on the precipice of a great cliff. Recognize those and understand that fear that's unhealthy is keeping you from driving towards that goal. So just taking the step towards writing it down and perceiving it and training your brain to look for it, you're already telling that unhealthy fear, your place is back there. I got this.
Yeah, we needed to get that again because that was so good. I mean, of course, they can listen to the podcast version, the audio, and listen back again. But for those that are in the room virtually right now, take that. I'm going to do the homework assignment myself. 11 minutes. Sit there, write down what wild success looks like for you, and then go ahead and take action. In fact, that writing portion is your first action. So
it's the first action. You've already taken a step.
Yeah.
Remember, it's like, they tell you if you want to lose weight or move around, it's like you're already making more progress walking 2 feet up the block than the person who's still sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
It is progress. Every step is progress. There is no failure. And some days you just got to sit on the couch and not do. That's you understanding today is a day for rest, physical rest, mental rest, emotional, spiritual rest. That is progress because you're understanding and listening. Today, I need to not. And that is still power. So let's train that negative self-talk to say, you know what? I got power over this. Yeah. I still know where I'm making progress. I still have my vision of wild success in line. And what I can tell you from personal experience is since writing that 11-minute exercise, I saw that stage. I have become a professional speaker. I have become a professional MC, and I have been validated with awards, becoming that conduit, keeping that vision top of mind, and knowing that I'm working towards something good. And I say that not to toot a horn, friends, truly. I say that because it became a true exercise for me. And I can see, having trained myself to look for it, I took power back over my life. I left a toxic job I was burnt out at. I started to do for me and work towards that and have a little power over what I wanted. And I'm manifesting that success day by day. And to me, it's not financial success. That was never part of it. And, I'm not rich right now. Guarantee it. However, I am rich in knowing that I have control over my future and control over where I'm going. And I keep the network around me that understands that vision, knows where I want to go, and looks for opportunities to assist me in getting there. So I've pulled people into my orbit and attracted them through that powerful manifestation that helps me continue to get there. So bring those powerful people into your orbit. If you have people who don't like that you're taking power back, it's because they got power by you not having any.
Y'all rewind that part. I'm not gonna have her repeat it. I'm not gonna have Devon repeat that. Y'all write that for yourself. No, this is so good. In fact, OTTO says, Operation Tech Takeover says, thank you, Joe and Devon. With what I have been going through these last 6 months, almost broke me. And this is inspiring.
I'm so glad, OTT. Just remember, it's a learning. Even if it's hard, even if it's got grief, even if it's got a hard day, understanding that you had a hard day is power. And just say, I had a hard day yesterday. Write it down. And remember, the people who want to cross that boundary line, the people who want to say, go back to doing what was valuable to me, only valued you because they could cross that boundary, only valued you because they could control you towards their goals. The minute you say, I have a goal, the minute you say, this is my success, this is my path, you will see the people who stay in that orbit because they believe in your path. They're attracted to that energy. They're attracted to that power. And you will see the people who are like, oh, I don't really like that for you. And you'll start to feel that shift. You start to feel that negativity. And it's your choice. Do you keep them in your orbit? Do you suggest that these are my boundaries? If you want to stay here, this is what I will accept. This is what I will not accept. Or do you say, thank you for being part of this season. That season is over, and move it on.
I was going to say this: when seasons change, the leaves wither and fall off the tree. So
don't worry about those leaves. Looking at our winter backgrounds, even if winter is hard, OTT, even if you're in the winter of your session right now, even if in your winter season, just remember that no matter what, the world will turn, winter will fade, spring will come, and something will bloom.
Love it. Love every bit. And we got people. We have Mitch, longtime viewer, but Mitch says, hello, all new here.
Hi, Mitch.
That's his tag. He comes in.
I see Miss Precious Williams, the absolute queen. Thank you for coming on. Precious is one of the people who got attracted into this orbit. I spoke power. I asked for power. I was attracted to her confidence and power, to her story of resilience and faith and overcoming and belonging. And now we're in this orbit together and we empower one another. But I never would have gotten here to be anywhere close to Precious Williams, who is the pitch queen. If you guys need to learn how to pitch yourself, that is who you need to go to. And now we've attracted each other and we can feed off of that positive energy. We can feed off of that. So just remember, as soon as you take back your power, you'll see who's attracted to that magnet, and it is epic.
Sounds like I need to have Precious on the show.
You do need to have Precious on the show. For anyone who needs to learn how to pitch themselves, to pitch their business, to pitch their wild success, to pitch that fabulous idea, you need to learn how to take the power of that pitch, to internalize it, to like embolden it with who you are. That'll teach you how to get it out of your body and into the universe and manifesting that success.
Hey, pitch. The power of pitching. I see the thumbnail already. So no, this has been excellent. Thank you so much for stopping by, Precious and others. Precious says, yes, we are in this orbit together, queen. Love it. And she said, I have failed forward many times.
Yes, you got to hear Precious's story, guys. Like, Precious' story is all about, you don't let that failure become an eternal winter. You let that failure push you into what that spring is, and it will continue and seasons will go. So, I highly recommend listen to her story, get on and follow her, read the books. Stories like that will remind you, OTT, it's winter now. It's not going to be like that forever. And don't give it the power to stay like that forever. So get some people in your orbit who have recovered from that and hear the stories and know that no matter what, seasons will change. You will get there. Snow will melt and you can go forward.
I love it. Hashtag pitch, please. Oh, love it. Love it. Yeah, so we got to connect Precious for sure and get you on here. But for everyone else that stopped by, thank you so much for stopping by the show. I have had some moments, with the newborn and things like that, being off and on in regards to consistency. Normally, I'm very consistent with this for the past year, but I'm going to get back on track because we have amazing guests like Devon and Precious, who's going to be speaking and sharing their thoughts. We're going to expand this audience to not just those who are looking at transition to tech, but those who are looking for career advice and guidance and also trying to find their wild success.
Wild success. Hashtag wild success.
Yes. And so we're so excited for that. But yeah, let's continue having these conversations. Do your homework assignment, 11 minutes, y'all. I'm challenging you. Let's keep each other accountable. 11 minutes, jump off of this and do that if you have the time. And let's come back next time and talk about those 11 minutes and see how it was.
Yes. And if you do your 11 minutes, contact me on LinkedIn. I want to hear it. Put it into the universe. Let's train our things and let me see how I can help you get there, even if it's just a word of positivity, knowing that you already set that goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you so much, family, for joining us on this episode of Techniche Tips. I'm your host, Joseph M. Smith. And until next time, like I always say, I hope to see you on the other side.
What if your story can change the lives of others? My name is Joseph M. Smith, and I'm the host and founder of Techniche Tips, a channel that's dedicated to telling the stories of those that just broken into tech, as well as those that are more established in the game. For more information, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to leave a comment as well, and I hope to see you on the other side.